The silence before the fire. I remember the silence more than anything else. Not the chaos, not the screaming, not even the explosions. No, what stayed with me was the silence. That suffocating quiet that fell over the last surviving outpost on Virell Prime, once the planetary defense grid failed and the Xiraki siege ships broke through atmosphere. We knew no one was coming. Virell Prime wasn't a Terran colony. It belonged to the Velari Consortium. I was there on contract, a tactical advisor to a species that preferred symphonies to warfare, silk to steel. They'd hired me, a human ex-marine, to train their militia after the first skirmishes with the Xiraki, but nothing in their collective psyche had prepared them for extinction. "Commander Thorne," said Alice Vale, her voice shaking behind her crystalline breathing mask. She was the highest-ranking Velari left, once a diplomat. Now, just someone trying not to cry in front of her people. Are we truly alone? Her question was rhetorical. Our long-range beacons had been crushed. Our orbital satellites were dust. And the last shuttle off-world had been shot down 6 minutes after takeoff. I watched it on a shattered holoscreen with blood on my hands and dust in my lungs. "We hold the line," I answered, not because it was true, but because hope, real or artificial, is the only thing that keeps soldiers standing. There were maybe 300 of us left, Velari engineers, wounded militia, a few medical bots. The barracks-turned-bunker was hidden beneath a mountain's root, shielded in natural rock and jury-rigged stealth plating. But the Xiraki weren't blind. They were methodical. Cruel. They didn't waste fire. They bled planets slowly. We had maybe 12 hours, give or take. And then the silence fell. No orbital strikes. No movement. No energy readings on the scanners. Just the cold hum of distant space and the static pop of dead comms. It was the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. I checked the sensor grid 3 times. Nothing. "Maybe they've left?" One of the Velari said behind me. Her voice was too hopeful, too desperate. "No," I muttered. "They're not done." Alice stood beside me, her translucent eyes watching the empty sky feed. "Then why the pause?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say I didn't know, but the truth was I did. They're waiting for fear to finish what their weapon started. That's how the Xiraki operate. Not just conquerors, psychological predators. They starve resistance. Break the mind before they break the body. I'd seen it once before. A colony on Eos Beta. They surrounded it, blockaded it, waited for the food to run out and the people to turn on each other. When they moved in, there was no fight left. Just silence. That's what they wanted here, too. And it was working. That night, I made my rounds, walking through dark corridors illuminated only by emergency glow panels, hearing the whisper of Velari prayers in forgotten dialects, the slow death rattle of someone's breath in the medical wing. Every time someone looked at me, I saw the question behind their eyes. Where's humanity now? And I didn't have an answer, because Earth wasn't sending anyone. The Velari hadn't signed the Terran Accord. No formal alliance. No treaty. Just some outsourced trainers and mercenaries like me. We were not a priority. And then, at 3:47 local time, something changed. The sensors picked up a signal. Not a Xiraki ping. Not Velari. A low, pulsing distortion on the hyperband. I sat up straight. No way. It repeated. Stronger. A short-range burst, encrypted. I ran a decryption loop. My hands trembled. Then the message came through. Hold fast. We see you. 40 minutes out. That voice. That code. Terran Naval Command. Alice stared at the screen like she was seeing a ghost. But they said, "Your people..." I know what they said. I grinned, because no one had expected humanity to come. Not for a planet that wasn't theirs. Not for people they didn't know. But someone had made a call. Someone had broken the rules. And out there in the void, a Terran warship was screaming toward us. Not quietly. Not carefully. Howling. A sound the void shouldn't make. They say space is silent. That's true, mostly. Sound doesn't travel in a vacuum. But when the Terran dreadnought Vengeance tore into Virell Prime's upper atmosphere, we felt the noise. It vibrated through stone. It cracked ceilings. It made the air shudder, like a beast snarling right beside your ear. 1 second, the sky was dead. The next, it was on fire. I was in the command alcove when the sensors overloaded. The Velari systems, delicate and refined, weren't built to process raw Terran military power. Energy spikes screamed across the console, and every proximity alert went red. Multiple contacts entering high orbit, bearing Terran transponder codes, yelled Keleth, a Velari technician who hadn't spoken louder than a whisper in days. Alyss Vale grabbed the console for balance as the mountain bunker trembled. That sound, what is it? The Vengeance, I whispered, breathless. She's using retro burns. Full thrust. You mean they're not trying to stay hidden? I grinned, so hard it hurt. No, they want the Xiraki to know exactly who's here. You don't sneak up on monsters like the Xiraki. You announce yourself with fury. You challenge them. You remind them there are worse things than them in the void. That's what Vengeance was doing. The next screen flashed blue, open comms channel. Unencrypted. A woman's voice came through, sharp and unmistakably human. This is Captain Sabine Wren of the TSS Vengeance. Virell Command. We're painting 10 Xiraki capital signatures in high atmosphere. Engaging now. Prepare for kinetic spillover. Spillover. That meant things were going to get messy. And gods, did they? We ran topside. What was left of us. I still don't know why. Maybe just to see it. To see the impossible become real. Outside the bunker, the valley stretched out like a scar, and above it, the sky had turned into a battlefield. The Vengeance was enormous. 25 kilometers of armored alloy, ion splitters, rail turrets, and retribution. She looked like a piece of the void had broken off and decided to make war. And she wasn't alone. 3 Terran war frigates darted around her like wolves, peppering the Xiraki formation with flak bursts and torpedoes that burned like white suns. Velari eyes aren't made for combat. They see light and beauty, not brutality. Some of them fell to their knees just watching it. It was overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful. The Xiraki didn't retreat. Of course not. They were predators, too proud to turn their backs. They moved to counter. 10 Xiraki warships rose up like horned leviathans, smooth and silent, with spines of bioplasma and hulls that shimmered like insect carapace. I'd seen them tear apart fleets. I'd seen them feed. They fired first. Blue arcs lanced toward the Vengeance, crackling to the upper atmosphere like lightning on a god scale. Entire chunks of the sky turned white-hot, but Vengeance didn't flinch. She took the first barrage like a champion in a coliseum, bleeding light and fire, and then answering with rage. Her ventral guns rotated, locked, and loosed a barrage that made the mountain quake. Orbital rail slugs broke the sound barrier 3 times before slamming into the lead Xiraki cruiser, cutting through its shielding like butter. A moment later, it exploded, violently, spectacularly, raining down flaming debris across the southern ridgeline. One of the Velari behind me gasped. Is that how humans fight? No, I said, watching the sky turn red. That's how we warn. The battle raged for 20 minutes, but to us on the ground, it felt like eternity. The Xiraki formation fell into disarray after their second ship was torn in half. The rest scattered. Some tried to break orbit, others dropping like crippled birds into the stratosphere. And through it all, the Vengeance didn't let up. Her guns howled, her fighters danced, and her captain, she broadcasted it all. No encryption, just fury. This is Terran Warship Vengeance. Virell Prime is under Terran protection. We are reclaiming the surface. You will stand down or be erased. No negotiation. No parley. The Xiraki were used to fear, used to silence. They didn't understand defiance, especially not from a species they considered lesser. I watched their last ship detonate midair after a final desperate charge, and for the first time in weeks, I realized we weren't alone anymore. The next morning, the air still smelled like fire. Not smoke. No, the mountain winds had carried that away by dawn. But the scent of scorched ozone and burning alloy lingered. A taste of war, thick on the tongue. The kind of scent that never leaves you. I stood at the bunker entrance, staring out across the valley, where pieces of a Xiraki cruiser still smoldered in the distance. The land had scars now, black, jagged ones. We'd traded silence for devastation. And then I heard it, the low wump-wump-wump of heavy atmospheric dropships. Still a few clicks out, but closing fast. I keyed my comm, get everyone to the entry platform. Human troops inbound. Alyssa met me at the door, flanked by her 2 remaining guards, who looked as though they hadn't slept in a week. Her voice, usually melodic, was tight. "You're certain they're human?" I turned, slowly, letting her see the faintest smile crack my dust-caked face. Unless the Xiraki started carving Terran flags into their hulls, yeah. The first drop pod came screaming in, trailing blue vapor, retro thrusters kicking up a cyclone of dirt and static as it landed in a controlled skid. Its hull bore the Terran Eagle, its wings spread wide, talons clenched. The hatch opened with a hiss. And then, boots. Heavy, black, steel-toed. Outstepped a soldier in the powered combat rig of the Terran Marine Corps, burnished titanium plates, exoframe augmentations, and a visor that glowed faint orange. Not a word spoken, just that unmistakable aura of readiness. The kind that says, "I've seen worse, and I'm still here." A dozen followed, fanning out, scanning the ridgeline. Then came the commander. No helmet, just close-cut hair, a half-burned cigar in the corner of her mouth, and a face that looked carved from granite. "Commander Thorne?" she asked, walking up to me like she just stepped off a transport to hell and didn't mind the heat. "That's me." She extended a hand. "Colonel Riker Miles. Special Operations Command, 1st Terran Fleet. Orders said we'd find you still breathing." "Barely." "Good." She took a long drag of her cigar. "Means I don't have to break in a new forward officer." Alyssa approached cautiously, clearly unsure how to read this human storm wrapped in armor. "You're here to protect us?" she asked. Riker gave her a glance that wasn't cruel, but it was sharp. "We're here to end this. You just happen to be on the side of breathing." I stepped between them. "What she means is, yes, we're not going anywhere." The colonel glanced up at the charred sky. "Intel shows 2 more Xiraki battalions planetside. Scattered. No centralized command, which means we got a few hours to make this dirt ours again. And then we hunt." She looked to me. "Your people can still fight?" I thought of the exhausted, terrified Velari back in the tunnels. Half-trained, underfed, and low on ammo. "They'll stand," I said, "if we lead them." She nodded once. "Then we move out at dusk. Local terrain maps are incomplete. We'll need you as scout lead. Think you can still run?" "Not fast, but I shoot straight." She cracked the first smile I'd seen all day. "That'll do." The rest of the day passed in blur motion. Terran medics set up triage inside the bunker. Engineers patched what was left of our defense grid. Drones swarmed the cliffs to establish forward sensor arrays. Even the Velari, blinking and awestruck, found themselves pulled into motion by the sheer presence of Terran resolve. Hope had returned. Not quietly, not gently, but in steel and fire. Alyssa caught me by the arm as I prepped my rifle for dusk. "I don't understand," she said. "Your species, your governments, they said they wouldn't come." I paused. "They didn't," I said, "but someone called in a favor. Somewhere out there, someone saw what this was and said, 'No, not like this.'" She looked at me like I was speaking riddles. Maybe I was. Then why help us? I looked out over the valley, where drop pods still rained down like meteors, and squads of Marines tightened perimeter nets. Because humans don't do well with the idea of no hope. We've lived there. We build from it. And when we see someone else drowning in it, we jump in. The sun was setting now, throwing long shadows across a battlefield we hadn't even begun to claim. Riker's voice came over the comms. "Thorne, you ready?" I clipped my helmet on. Locked it. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go make noise." The twilight painted everything in long, deep shadows, perfect for concealment, perfect for war. The Terran Marines blended into the terrain like they'd been born in it. No words wasted. No noise made. They moved like ghosts with guns. And me? I led the point. The terrain ahead was a canyon choke, natural rock walls carved over millennia, sharp-edged and narrow, the kind of place where an ambush makes gods out of men, or gets them killed in silence. I crouched behind a ridge, scanning through the heat vision overlay on my visor, the faintest movement to the north, a ripple, Xiraki, 6 of them, scouting party. I gestured back, standard hand signs. Colonel Rika saw it, nodded once. Her squad peeled out, setting positions without so much as the crunch of a boot. The Velari militia, stationed behind our rear line, did their best to mimic the silence. They weren't soldiers. Not yet, but they were learning fast. Xiraki don't speak in human ways. No radio chatter. No whispers. Just low vibrations across shared biological channels. And we had only started to crack that code. They crept into the canyon like shadows that had peeled themselves from the walls. But this time, they weren't the only predators. Rika's voice came over the private comm channel. Barely a breath. Green light. On my mark. I raised my rifle. Heart steady. Breathing even. 3, 2, 1. We opened with silence. Not a gunshot. Not a missile. Just a coordinated cascade of suppressed rounds from kinetic rifles. Each one whisper quiet but thunderous in impact. The lead Xiraki's chest detonated outward in a spray of black ichor. The second turned and caught 2 rounds through the skull before it even hissed. The last 4 scattered, shrieking. But they never got far. One leapt onto the canyon wall. Rika dropped it mid-air. Another vanished behind a ledge, flanked and eliminated by 2 Terran scouts with blades drawn. The last 2 ran right toward me. Bad idea. I dropped the first with a tight burst to the midsection, center of mass. The second jumped, claws extended, gurgling some unholy noise, but I sidestepped and slammed my boot into its jaw, then shot it twice while convulsing the dirt. 8 seconds. That's all it took. When the last body hit the ground, I turned to find Rika already pacing to the carnage, helmet off, eyes hard. That wasn't the main force, she said. Just a scout net. I nodded. Means they're still close. Watching. She knelt by a Xiraki corpse, pulled something from the base of its spine, a fleshy gland connected to a pulsing core. This is how they communicate over distance. Bionodes. They won't know this team went silent unless another cell picks it up. I stared at her. So we still have surprise? She gave a tight smile. We have about 20 minutes of it. Then she stood and faced the Velari squad behind us. They looked pale. Some were trembling. A few hadn't even lifted their weapons. Rika didn't shout. She just spoke. You just watch what happens when you hit first. When you strike first. The Xiraki aren't gods. They bleed. They die. And you could be the reason they stop showing up. One of the younger Velari, a wide-eyed female named Suicidal, stepped forward, hands shaking. I'm not a soldier, she whispered. Rika tilted her head. Neither was I once. Didn't matter. Then she handed Suicidal her sidearm. It fits your hand. You aim it right, it'll do the rest. But if you don't pull the trigger when they come, they will tear you apart. I watched Suicidal stare down at the weapon like it was a sacred object. Then slowly, with trembling fingers, she holstered it. And that was it. A moment. A transformation. We moved fast after that, scanning caverns, flanking canyons. I led the forward team. Rika led the strike group. We tagged enemy outposts, cleared a nest, and routed a supply crawler in less than an hour. We were hitting them faster than they could adapt. Then came the call from the Vengeance in orbit. Thorne. Rika. Priority alert. Long-range scan picked up Xiraki heavy signatures, converging east of your location. 20+. Possibly armored. They're coming. Rika looked at me. They know. Yeah, I said. They're mad now. She keyed her comm to the Velari militia. Dig in. Fortify your position. Whatever happens next. Hold. That's an order. A pause. And if any of you want to leave, now's your chance. No one moved. Not one of them. They weren't soldiers. Not yet. But by night's end they would be. They came at us like night itself had grown claws. 27 Xiraki, confirmed, descended from the eastern ravines, bigger than the scout drones, clad in chitin-plated armor that shimmered violet under starlight. Some carried plasma, throwers grafted into their arms. Others just had talons the size of human forearms. We saw them first on the seismic feeds, thuds echoing through stone. Then came the war screams. Not words, not speech, just sound, raw and ugly, sent from their glands to our nervous systems. Every Velari within earshot staggered as their senses rebelled. Their species wasn't made for this. Not for psychic aggression. Not for feeling of being hunted. One collapsed. Another started crying, begging the stone to open and swallow her whole. That's when I stepped forward. Everyone get behind the second line. I barked. Marines! Up front, kinetic spread pattern. Velari, you hold this ridge. You hold it if you have to with your teeth. But you do not break. Reich appeared beside me like war incarnate. Armor sealed, visor glowing red now. She walked like every step was already vengeance for a wound that hadn't healed yet. Air support won't reach us in time, she said. And artillery's jammed from that earlier EMP blast. Then we fight tooth and boot, I said, like Earth taught us. She nodded once. Then let's teach them fear. The Xiraki charged just after midnight. They came over the ridge in swarms, fast, fluid, unnatural. Their limbs moved wrong, like puppets with too many strings. And when they screamed, it rattled teeth. But we prepared. The first ones hit a minefield. Smart minds, buried by Terran engineers an hour before the attack. The ground erupted in gouts of flame and shredded limbs. The second wave broke into our firing lines, and we lit them up. I dropped 3 in my first burst. Armor-piercing rounds tore through black bone like paper. Beside me, Rika's railgun bucked with every shot, its recoil absorbed by her powered frame as she carved a path of destruction. Her squad fought like demons, each one covering the others. No waste, no panic. The Velari? Gods help me, they held. Their aim was shaky, their stance uncertain. But they fired. They screamed. They stood. Even Surrealists, barely able to hold a sidearm steady, dropped as a Xiraki soldier that had flanked the barricade. Her first kill. Her eyes were wide and glassy, but she didn't freeze. She reloaded. That was the moment. That was when I knew. They weren't prey anymore. We pushed into the flanking units, engaging at close range. Blades clashed. Blood sprayed. The Xiraki fought like berserkers, unrelenting, unreasoning, alien. One of them slammed me into a rock shelf, claws digging through my shoulder plate. I stabbed it through the eye with my boot knife and kicked it into the dirt. My armor hissed where its acidic blood touched the plating. Pain radiated through my ribs, but I stood. I had to. Rika called out, "Push left. They're folding. Hit the flank, now." And we did. We drove them back. Not with numbers. Not with superior tech. With rage. With grit. With the kind of madness that comes from knowing death is a breath away and still taking one more step. The last Xiraki warrior broke and tried to run. Velari militia cut it down before it reached the rocks. When the last scream faded and the last weapon clattered to the dirt, we stood among the corpses in the smoking ruin of the ridge line. The canyon was soaked in black blood. Fire still burned, but we were still breathing. Surrealist stumbled toward me, her arms slick with blood, not hers. "I didn't think I could," she whispered. "You just did," I said, "and now they'll never forget it." Rika walked past us, helmet under her arm, her face streaked with soot. We confirmed full retreat. They left the surface. What's left of them? I looked at her. "You sure?" She didn't smile, but her voice softened. "We made this ground ours again." Behind us, the Velari gathered the wounded, the survivors, the ones who'd changed. Alyss Vale came forward, her diplomatic robes stained with soot and dust, her eyes shining. "We held," she said, voice trembling. I looked her in the eye. "No," I said, "we won." The battlefield was quiet now, but it wasn't peace. It was a stillness after a scream, the kind where you don't trust silence anymore. Not after what you've seen. Not after the bodies have stopped moving. We spent the night stacking the fallen. Xiraki corpses reeked of scorched meat and rot, their armor curling off like dead shell. Terran Marines tagged and burned the bodies. No trophies. No hesitation. The Velari, ever delicate, performed ritual laments for their own dead. 17 gone. 11 Velari militia. 4 medics. 2 Marines. I made myself remember each name. We didn't just survive the night. We paid for it. By dawn, the Vengeance had dropped 2 more squads. Fresh troops, medics, engineers. The ridge became a forward base. Shield pylons rose. A watchtower hummed. The once-forgotten bunker now pulsed with life. Raw, scarred, determined life. But we weren't done. The Xiraki still held orbit. Captain Sabine Wren's voice came through the high band. At 8:12 hours. Ground team, this is Vengeance. Priority intel confirms residual Xiraki warships in high planetary orbit. They've gone dark, but they're there. We've tracked radiation pulses. Cloaked. Waiting. Rika looked up from the field med table, where she was having a cracked rib sealed. They're not retreating. They're watching. Recalculating. I nodded, looking for a way back in. Sabine continued. We're prepping for orbital sweep, but we need confirmation. That means recon. One of you's going up. I didn't wait for someone else to volunteer. I'll do it. Rika looked at me, mouth twitching between pride and irritation. You're still half-patched and your left arm's twitching like it's had too much coffee. I still shoot better than your best rookie. You're not wrong, she muttered. They gave me a recon shuttle. Small, fast, almost no armor. Designed to slip through static fields and drift past sensor nets. I took only 1 passenger. Alyssa. She insisted. I need to see them, she said, strapping him beside me. See what? Our nightmares. I need to understand what you're fighting. We broke atmosphere in 30 seconds flat. The blue skies stretching into black. The ground falling away behind us like a memory. And then we saw it. Them. The Xiraki ships. Hulking masses of bone metal and psionic alloy, floating dead still in low orbit, veiled by cloak fields, but now visible thanks to the scanner mod Rika's engineers had wired in. There were 3 of them, and they were massive. One had hull fractures and external scoring, likely damage from Vengeance's earlier barrage. But the others, they were intact. Quiet, but not gone. Waiting. They're not just warships, Alyssa whispered, staring at the shapes with wide, horrified eyes. They're living. Half living. I corrected. Their ships are bred, grown, engineered like predators in deep space. The largest began to move, slowly, deliberately, not toward us, toward Virell Prime. This is recon of Vengeance. They're coming back down. I repeat, they're descending. Sabine's voice snapped through with urgency. Confirmed. We're firing. Stand by for orbital engagement. And that's when it happened. The Xiraki fired first. A burst of psionic energy slammed into the Vengeance, hard enough to throw us off course. Our shuttle tumbled, systems flickering. Alarms screamed in our ears. I wrestled with the controls, pulling us into a spin recovery, fingers white-knuckled on the yoke. Hold on, I shouted. We barely stabilized above the atmosphere's edge, just high enough to see Vengeance light up the stars. She retaliated with everything. Missile banks, railguns, EMP bursts. Her forward lance cracked through the void like a lightning strike from a god's own arsenal. She hit the first Xiraki cruiser mid-core and shattered it. The second one tried to flee. Didn't get far. The Vengeance's dorsal turrets opened up in a full spread, scoring a direct hit that sent its cloak generator into meltdown. The ship peeled apart like petals in fire. But the third one, it dove, straight toward the planet. No targeting, no weapon systems, just mass and momentum. It's going for the surface. Alyssa gasped. They're going to crash it into the bunker on purpose. And she was right. The last Xiraki ship was doing what monsters do when they know they've lost. It was going to take someone with it. Vengeance, this is Thorne. We need intercept now. Negative, Sabine answered. Angle's too steep. We cannot fire without risking surface impact fallout. Rika's voice broke through local comms. Thorne, we got one shot. You're closer. Can you hit it from the upper thermosphere? I looked down at the shuttle's payload. A single orbital spike missile. Maybe not good enough. I glanced at Alyssa. You trust me? She looked terrified, but she nodded. Then, buckle in. We're about to make a terrible decision. The cockpit shuddered as the shuttle hit its limits. Speed, altitude, stability. Everything was in the red. Alarms howled like wounded animals. The Xiraki warship was streaking toward the surface like a spear hurled by extinction itself. Its hull glowed with atmospheric friction, its trajectory unmistakable. Straight toward the mountain, toward the bunker, toward them. I didn't think. I moved. We flipped the shuttle into a vertical roll, shedding altitude fast, letting the dive pull us behind the Xiraki ship's tail. It was like flying behind a dying god. Chunks of hull peeling off, fire in every crevice, and a hum that made the back of her eyes ache. Alyssa gripped her seat restraints, knuckles pale. Tell me this plan isn't suicidal. Oh, it's suicidal, I muttered. I just plan to survive anyway. I armed the orbital spike, our one and only missile, designed to punch through shielding and bury itself deep before detonating with a directional burst, meant for hardened orbital targets. Not something already falling at terminal velocity. No room for second chances. I set the targeting override. Manual. Alyssa blinked. You're not using autolock? Too slow. And that thing's radiating so much interference, it would miss. She stared. Then how do you plan to hit it? I looked at her. I'm going to fly inside it. She stopped breathing. So, did I? We dove hard into the upper plume trailing behind the Xiraki vessel. Turbulence hit like fists. Heat climbed past redline. Metal groaned like it remembered pain. There, a rupture in its rear plating, maybe 10 meters across. I threaded the shuttle through the breach. Fire enveloped us. The sensors shorted. The world went white, and then black. Inside, it was a different kind of horror. Organic, pulsing. The inner hull of the Xiraki ship breathed around us. Walls contracting and twitching, laced with wet bioelectrical nerve clusters. I saw the engine core, exposed, flickering, thrumming like a heartbeat on the edge of seizure. Target locked. I shouted, firing now. The missile launched straight into the core. I slammed the throttle. Hold on. We punched out, ejected mid-breach. The shuttle tumbling, screaming, caught in the detonation's echo. My vision blurred. G-forces crushed me. I thought we were dead. Then the sky tore open. The Xiraki ship exploded. Not outward, but inward, imploding in a thunderclap of light and rupture. The pieces burned up before they could hit ground. A shock wave passed over the upper atmosphere, like a silent scream, and the stars returned. We fell for what felt like years. The parachute failed halfway. Impact broke a rib, maybe two, but we lived, buried halfway in a crater of dirt and shattered glass canopy, coughing and laughing like lunatics. A shadow passed over us. Terran Marines, evac squad, Rika among them, pulling her helmet off as she sprinted. You mad bastard, she growled, hauling me up. You did it. I nodded, blew it up from the inside, burned before impact. She looked over her shoulder at the sky. Never seen a Xiraki do that before. Suicide dive. Because they knew something, I rasped. She narrowed her eyes. What? That no one was coming to stop them. A beat of silence. Until we did. 1 week later. The bunker was a city now. Shield domes. Terran tents. Velari housing. Joint command posts. Flags flying side by side. The Xiraki had withdrawn. Their fleet gone. No scouts. No strikes. No whisper on the void. Because they'd learned something that day. Not just that humans were dangerous, but that when no one else comes, we do. Not for profit. Not for politics. But because someone should. I stood beside Alyssa on the command ridge, watching a new generation of Velari march through drills, disciplined, proud, changed. She asked me softly, "What happens now?" I didn't have all the answers, but I said what I knew. We rebuild, we train, and if they come back, we make them remember. She looked at me, eyes shining, and if they don't, I looked up at the stars. Then we go where they do.